The X-Men have faced down genocide, Sentinels, the Phoenix Force itself. And they always stood up in the face of danger, but this week they were absolutely shook in Uncanny X-Men 18. And what was it? A horror film apparently is where they draw the line, and they absolutely had a breakdown of this episode of Uncanny X-Men, Doc.
What really, really, really pushed them to the point where they didn't know what to do, and they felt like it was the end of their world, was having the bad guy in a horror movie be a mutant.
Yeah, so let's break down what turned these once heroes into fragile punchlines, starting with the X-Men veterans. Kitty Pryde, who's led missions against alien wars and survived the Brood, is now screaming crap in a crock pot like she'd never seen violence before. Nightcrawler, who's been to hell and back, is nervously asking if this movie is as bad as it sounds. And Wolverine himself, is more shaken by this fictional film than he was during M-Day or the Legacy virus. These are characters who have faced extermination and global hate, and this is what rattles them, a horror movie.
Not, all the many times Magneto has killed hundreds or thousands of people, not any of the times that Apocalypse has tried to be terrible. God forbid the bad guy in a slasher flick is a mutant, because I don't know how our reputation can survive this.
Well, and this is what happens when Gail Simone takes a concept that doesn't fit the characters and just shoves it in there anyway, and you end up with terrible characterization, especially on Wolverine.
It was the epitome of bringing back all the worst aspects of Dadverine. All he's super concerned about is protecting the children all the time. That's the only thing he gives a damn about. They're not going to be able to deal with this level of discrimination. I've kind of tried to memory hole as much of this era of X-Men as humanly possible, but I'm pretty sure we started this whole era out with people are kind of generally okay with mutants right now. It's a peek into the mind of an activist leftist where any amount of criticism is going to ruin them, mostly because their entire perception is built on lies.
It's just a weird concept that having a horror movie featuring a mutant character as a monster all of a sudden would bring down all this hate and violence on mutants across the world or something like that. That's not really the way that the world works, but it's also supposed to be social commentary about people punching down mostly on LGBTQ and trans people. That's really what this is all about. But do you think anybody would have the balls to make a horror movie with a trans villain or an LGBTQ villain? They're literally off fucking limits. Like, the metaphor doesn't work.
You haven't been able to make a movie with a Libidaqua or any other type of villain as the actual monster, the slasher, since the 90s?
Marvel then brings in real-world writers and horror creators to debate whether a slasher film starring a mutant villain is problematic. It's supposed to be high-minded commentary on media representation, but the metaphor completely falls apart. Mutants aren't a clean allegory for marginalized groups anymore. Many are walking weapons of mass destruction. Jean Grey has literally wiped out planets. Storm can summon continent-wide natural disasters. Magneto nearly reversed the magnetic poles of Earth. So when writer C. Robert Cargill says the film is punching down, he's missing that in this universe, these fears aren't irrational. They're survival instincts.
The idea of having them as the bad guy is well within reason, because we just spent 5 years of the fucking Krakoa era. All of us saw them as the bad guys, and the fact that they're still acting like bad guys 90% of the time. What? Cyclops just basically said, we'll destroy the planet unless you let our old boss go. What was that, 6 months ago? He had his contingency plan where all these mutants were going to attack the nuclear fucking bases and blow them all up and set off all the nukes.
You have fucking Kitty Pryde saying crap in a crack pot. How could they do this to us? How could they portray us in this manner? She literally phased a gun into a man's head and murdered him. She phased another guy halfway through a sidewalk and murdered him.
There's also the very, very secondary commentary on them being completely not self-fucking aware. And any single tiny little bit of criticism is the end of the world for them. There's definitely some very, very, I don't know if it was intentional, but absolute truth to that, where some people just can't take any fucking criticism. And the X-Men have become those people.
There's even the point where that director's like, you can't really see my movie as anti-mutant. We never even used the term mutant. I think calling out like alt-right dog whistles or something, or gaslighting.
Yeah, exactly. It was, oh my God, alt-right dog whistles. It's nothing but social commentary. First, it was the Lebedequah allegory. Then it's the whether or not you're punching up and down. Then it's the dog whistles. And then it gets into the self-loathing. A minority member that is self-loathing because being critical of their own race and the behaviors that become the stereotypes of their race is self-loathing. And that's exactly what they do to the actress that's playing Mutina, the kids. They went to New Orleans because apparently the actress is doing a press tour. It's going to be in New Orleans, so they want to confront her about it. And it turns out she's a self-loathing mutant because she's critical of the way that mutants behave and starred in a movie that criticized the behavior of mutants.
Gail Simone was never the best writer in the world.
No.
But she was a good enough writer where she got some runs and stuff like that. You can't even recognize what she's even doing here anymore. I think TikTok and fucking Blue Sky have absolutely destroyed her mind to where she's incapable of writing anything interesting and not shoehorning in just social commentary on every single page of her comic book anymore. She's supposed to be getting over this new generation of X-Men heroes. The Outliers, Marvel's newest mutant teens, are not saving lives or standing up to danger, but melting down over a horror movie. One literally puts a bucket of popcorn over her head to hide from the screen. Another asks, why do I feel like crying right now? The rest slump in a diner complaining that the world sees them as monsters. One laments, they ruin us by showing us at our worst. Compare that to the real next-gen X-Men. Kitty Pryde took on a Sentinel alone at 13 years old. Jubilee saw Genosha fall and still joked her way through the trauma. Magic was abducted to Limbo and came back swinging. These new kids, they fold under the weight of a screenplay. How are we supposed to believe they're actually ready to become X-Men? When she put the bucket over her head, I mean, that was like, what are you supposed to think? What is that supposed to do the reader other than point out that this character fucking sucks?
And honestly, the younger mutants are rubbing off on the older mutants, where none of them can take any amount of social discomfort anymore unless they are absolutely portrayed in the perfect light all the time. They buckle and break.
I think the worst part is when the dude that they're staying with in New Orleans says, this is not the world I want my daughter to grow up in, over a fucking movie. It's so fucking incongruous, not only to what the X-Men are, but the real expectations of what life is, that it makes it completely fucking satire.
Exactly. I mean, well-adjusted people can handle being not portrayed perfectly. But apparently any amount of, I don't know, emotional adjustment that the mutants have at this point has gone completely out the window. I don't know, maybe spending 4 years on your fucking segregation island kind of made you a little fucking thin-skinned to any criticism.
One thing is definitely clear, though, that Gail Simone was not good when she arrived on Uncanny X-Men, and she's getting worse. And we see the sales are going down. Interest in X-Men really feels like it's at an all-time low for the entire franchise, even going back to when it failed at the beginning. And if they keep this up and they leave her on this book and she's not removed during this Age of Revelation, and they don't have a contingency plan to replace her with somebody adequate or even average, they're going to kill the name Uncanny X-Men. This is a crown jewel for Marvel Comics.
It really is, and they've broken it. The Hickman era did a lot of damage. You've basically permanently ran off anybody that had been just gotten sick of the X-Men because it got boring. You managed to win them back, and then you ran them off probably permanently with how you handled most of that era of X-Men. Even when you made promises after promises after promises of this being a different era, you've somehow made it worse. I'm not even seeing the people that used to defend all the segregationist orgy island defending this shit now.
If you appreciate this, but you would like a longer version of it, because we did have to edit it down here for the YouTube, you do need to go over to Think Critical Patreon. The doc is right here. The Doc Unfiltered show, you'll get this as well as our unfiltered review of Gotham City Sirens, exclusive to Patreon. You probably won't see that one on the YouTube. So if you want to hear that review, you'll have to go there.